Surprise! April held back on purpose. You're about to wake up. For weeks, it felt like nothing was really landing, like something was missing, and most people are assuming that's the point. That April is just one of those months, slow, heavy, forgettable. But that's not the truth. April isn't empty. It lets certain situations stretch longer than they should have, not because nothing was happening, but because something was being saved. And now, with only a few days left, that restraint is gone. What didn't move before is about to move all at once. Nothing from the beginning of this year goes unpaid. Everything you set into motion in January, February, and March, every decision, every delay, every quiet compromise, didn't disappear. It stacked. It accumulated. It waited for its moment to come back around. And these last days of April, this is where it returns. Not as punishment, but as balance. There's a rhythm to how things unfold, whether people notice it or not. Just like seasons shift, just like tides rise and fall, there's a point where everything gets accounted for. Late April is that point. It's where the first stretch of the year closes its books. And what that creates is something very specific. Clarity, but not the kind you slowly figure out. The kind that hits all at once. You suddenly see what's working, what's been forced, what's been surviving on effort instead of truth. Relationships that felt fine start to feel obvious. Paths you were unsure about suddenly feel either solid or completely empty. There's no middle ground here, and that's why it feels intense. Not because something new is happening, but because nothing can hide anymore. But this isn't something coming to take from you. It's something coming to settle what's been hanging over you for longer than it should have. There's something very specific happening in these last days of April, and most people don't recognize it until later, when it's already past. Your instincts right now are not operating at their usual level. They're sharper, faster, and a lot harder to ignore, even if you try to rationalize them away. This isn't random. It happens at the end of cycles like this because the forward noise starts to quiet down. When everything is moving fast, you're constantly reacting, adjusting, thinking ahead. But when a cycle begins to close, that movement slows just enough for you to actually hear what's been underneath the entire time. And what's underneath is always clearer than what's on the surface. That's why you might be noticing certain things feel more obvious than they did a week ago. You look at a situation and suddenly it's clear whether it's right for you or not. You interact with someone and without overthinking it, you already know where you stand with them. You consider a decision, and before you can even build a logical argument, there's already a quiet answer sitting there. Clarity doesn't get louder, it gets harder to ignore. The problem is, people are trained to distrust that. They wait for more proof, more confirmation, more signs that make it make sense on paper. But this window doesn't work like that. The clarity shows up first, and the explanation comes later. If you wait for everything to line up logically, you miss the moment where the decision actually had power. And right now, there are very specific types of instincts that matter more than usual. The ones you've been brushing off. The ones that don't come with emotion, just a steady sense of knowing. That quiet no to something that looks fine on the surface. That pull towards something that doesn't yet have a clear outcome. That shift in how you see someone, even if nothing obvious has changed. Ignoring those during this period comes with a cost that doesn't show up immediately, but you feel it later as delay. Things drag longer than they need to. Situations that could have been resolved now stretch into weeks or months. Not because you made the wrong move, but because you didn't make the move when the clarity was there. Timing doesn't reward perfection, it rewards recognition. Acting on your instincts right now doesn't mean everything has to be figured out. It just means you're responding while the signal is clean. And when you do that, even imperfect decisions tend to land better than perfectly planned ones made too late. These last days of April don't exist on their own. They're not just an ending, they're setting the tone for what comes immediately after. And what comes after is not subtle. The first day of May doesn't ease you into anything. It starts with a full moon already in place, and that changes the entire dynamic. Instead of a slow build into the month, you're stepping directly into something that's already at peak intensity. That matters because full moons don't introduce new things. They reveal what's already there. They bring things to the surface, make them visible, and force a level of awareness that can't be pushed aside. So whatever these last days of April are showing you, May is going to amplify it. If something is clear now, it becomes undeniable then. If something is unresolved now, it becomes unavoidable then. There's no gap between realization and confrontation. It's almost immediate. April shows you the truth. May makes you face it. And this is where it becomes powerful in a positive way. Because while that kind of shift can feel intense, it also creates momentum. You're not stuck waiting for things to change. You're stepping into a period where things move quickly, where decisions carry weight, and where clarity turns into action without needing to be forced. That's why these last days matter as much as they do. They're not just closing something out, they're positioning you. What you recognize now determines how you step into that full moon energy, whether you move with it or feel like you're being pushed by it. And once May starts, it doesn't slow down to give you time to figure it out. It assumes you already have. And now, it's time for today's comment of the day. You are capable, worthy, and resilient, and every step you take, no matter how small, brings you closer to the life you deserve. This one feels like something you need to be reminded of, not just once, but often, because it's easy to overlook small steps. They don't feel like much in the moment. They don't look impressive, but they add up. And more importantly, they keep you moving. Being capable, worthy, resilient. Those aren't just words. They show up in the fact that you're still trying, still adjusting, still taking steps, even when it's slow. And that's what builds the path forward. Thank you for sharing this. For a lot of people, what surfaces in these last days isn't confusion. It's a decision that's been quietly forming for a while. And what makes it difficult isn't that the options are unclear. It's that all of them can be justified. You can stay and make it work. You can leave and start fresh. You can delay and tell yourself it's not the right time yet. On paper, every path has a reason behind it. That's why it feels like a real dilemma. But when you look closer, there's always one option that stands slightly apart from the others, not because it's easier, safer, or more logical, but because it puts you first in a way the others don't. And that's where the resistance shows up, because choosing that option often means dropping the need to explain yourself. It means not softening the decision to make it more acceptable to other people. It means not adding extra steps just to make it look reasonable. The right decision rarely needs permission, only courage. You already know which one it is. It's the one that feels direct, the one that doesn't require you to adjust yourself to fit it, the one that feels clean, even if it's uncomfortable. What makes this moment different is that you're being pushed to choose it without negotiation. Not later, not after more thinking, not once everything feels perfectly aligned. Now. Because if you don't, something else will choose for you. Situations will shift, people will move, circumstances will close certain paths without asking. And then the decision you avoided becomes a reaction instead of a choice. The longer you delay a clear decision, the less control you have over how it unfolds. This isn't about pressure, it's about ownership. Recognizing that you're not stuck between options, You're standing in front of a moment that's asking you to be honest about what you actually want without dressing it up or filtering it. And once that choice is made, even if it's imperfect, everything around it starts to reorganize faster than expected. At the same time all of this is happening, there's something else moving through these last days that's easy to overlook if you're too focused on decisions and clarity. April isn't just closing things out, it's also handing things over, not answers, not conclusions, but ideas. You might notice thoughts coming in at random moments, ways to approach something differently, solutions that weren't obvious before, directions that didn't even feel relevant a few weeks ago. Not loud, not overwhelming, but consistent enough to catch your attention if you don't dismiss them too quickly. This isn't about understanding everything right now, it's about receiving something you can use next. The best ideas don't arrive when you're ready, they arrive when you're open. And what makes this different from normal is how practical these ideas feel. They're not abstract or distant, they connect to something real, how to fix a situation, how to start something, how to approach a problem in a way that actually works. For some people, it shows up as a business idea that suddenly feels doable. For others, it's a creative direction that feels natural instead of forced. Sometimes it's as simple as seeing a solution to something that's been sitting unresolved for weeks. But the key here is movement. These ideas aren't meant to sit in your head. They're meant to be acted on, even in small ways. Because once you start moving with them, more of it becomes clear. Clarity follows movement. It doesn't come before it. That's what April is leaving you with. Not a finished plan, not a perfect path, but something you can actually use to step forward. And if you take it seriously, even just a little, it has a way of opening doors faster than expected once May begins. There's a point in every cycle where things stop being uncertain and start becoming obvious. Not because anything dramatic happened, but because something in you finally stops looking away. That's where these last days of April are leading. You may find yourself seeing people differently, not in a negative way, just more accurately. Certain patterns that used to feel confusing suddenly make complete sense. Things you used to question now feel settled, like there's nothing left to figure out. And the key thing about these realizations is that they don't come with noise. They don't need to be argued or analyzed. They just land quietly, and once they do, they don't leave. Some truths don't need proof. They only need recognition. This can show up in small moments. A conversation where you suddenly understand someone's intentions without them saying it directly. A situation you've been trying to make sense of that now feels simple. Even something about yourself that you've been avoiding but now feels impossible to ignore. And once that clarity is there, you can't go back to seeing things the old way. You can't pretend not to know what you know. You can't force something to feel right when it clearly doesn't anymore. But this isn't a loss. It's protection. Because from that point forward, your decisions start coming from a different place. You're no longer guessing, hoping, or second-guessing what's in front of you. You're responding to what's actually there. What you see clearly, you stop negotiating with. That's the real shift. The world doesn't suddenly change. People don't suddenly become different. What changes is your ability to see without distortion. And once that happens, everything you choose moving forward carries a different level of certainty. To really understand why these last days feel the way they do, you have to look at what they're leading into. Because what's coming next doesn't wait, doesn't build slowly, and doesn't give you time to hesitate. May moves fast. It carries a kind of energy that pushes things forward whether you feel ready or not. Not in a chaotic way, but in a way that demands participation. It rewards movement, decisions, and people who show up prepared to act on what they already know. That's why April had to slow things down first. It created the space for you to see clearly, decide honestly, and pick up what you need before things accelerate again. Because once May begins, that quiet phase is over. Momentum doesn't ask if you're ready, it moves with whoever is. This is where things start to take shape quickly. Ideas that came to you start turning into real opportunities. Decisions you made start creating visible shifts. Situations that felt stuck begin to move, sometimes all at once. And the difference between feeling carried by that momentum or overwhelmed by it comes down to what you did in these last days of April. If you paid attention, if you acted on what felt clear, if you picked up what was being handed to you, then May doesn't feel like pressure. It feels like progress. Because the fire that's coming isn't there to burn things down. It's there to move things forward, fast, directly, and without hesitation. There's a very specific feeling that can show up in these last days, and it's easy to misread if you're not paying attention to it properly. Everything around you looks the same people, the same routines, the same environments. Nothing has visibly changed. But your position inside of it feels different. It's like you're standing half a step to the side of where you used to be. You're still there, still involved, still present, but not in the same way. Things that used to pull you in completely now feel like you're observing them from a slight distance. Conversations feel different. Reactions feel different. Even your role in certain situations doesn't land the same way it used to. And the instinct is to think something is off or that something needs to be fixed. But that's not what's happening. Discomfort isn't always a sign you're in the wrong place. Sometimes it's a sign you've outgrown your old position in it. This isn't about leaving everything behind or making sudden changes. It's much more subtle than that. It's about your perspective shifting just enough that you can no longer fully immerse yourself in the same patterns without noticing them. You start seeing the structure of things, how conversations repeat themselves, how certain dynamics play out the same way every time, how people show you who they are without needing to say it directly. And once you see that, you can't fully go back to participating in it the way you used to. But here's where it becomes powerful. That slight distance gives you control. It gives you the ability to choose how you engage instead of reacting automatically. You're no longer fully inside the pattern. You're aware of it while you're in it. Once you step slightly outside the pattern, you stop being controlled by it. And that changes everything, even if nothing around you has visibly shifted yet. Because now, your responses come from awareness, not habit. Your decisions come from observation, not pressure. That feeling of being slightly out of place isn't disconnection, it's repositioning. It's you adjusting to a version of yourself that no longer fits perfectly into the same space in the same way. And once that shift happens, it quietly sets the stage for everything that comes next. If you zoom out and look at April as a whole, it starts to make a lot more sense. Not just as a series of random experiences, but as something that had a very specific direction behind it. Months have their own rhythm, their own way of shaping things beneath the surface. And April 2026 wasn't a light month. It didn't move in obvious ways. It didn't give constant rewards or clear progress. Instead, it applied pressure in subtle, consistent ways that forced things to reveal their actual strength. It tested what you believe you deserve, not through words, but through situations that made you either settle or stand firm. It tested your tolerance for uncertainty by putting you in positions where you didn't have immediate answers. It tested your relationship with your own authority by making you choose between what feels right to you and what feels acceptable to everyone else. And most of this didn't feel like a test while it was happening. It just felt inconvenient, slow, or unclear. But now, in these final days, you start to see what held up and what didn't. The end of a cycle doesn't create truth. It reveals what was already true. Certain things remain solid no matter how uncertain things got. Certain decisions, certain directions, certain parts of yourself stayed consistent. Those are the things that passed. And then there are the things that couldn't hold. The situations that only worked under specific conditions. The patterns that required constant effort just to maintain. The ideas that sounded good but didn't feel stable when pressure was applied. Those didn't fail by accident. They were never meant to carry forward. And this is where people often misunderstand what's happening. They see something fall away and assume it's a loss. But in reality, it's a correction. It's removing what couldn't support what's coming next. Anything that can't survive clarity was never built to last. Because what May is about to bring requires more capacity than what you had at the beginning of April. And if you're still here, still watching, I genuinely appreciate it. It says a lot more than you think. If something in this video clicked for you, even in a small way, take that seriously. That's more than enough to move forward with. You don't need perfect timing or perfect certainty, just a willingness to act on what already makes sense to you. As May begins, things start to move. And you don't have to chase that movement, you just have to meet it. So step into it with a clear mind, a steady pace, and trust that what you've seen, what you've realized, is already preparing you for what's next.